Okay, let's do this. Season 3, the Fire 5 at Phoenix podcast. So for those of you who have been tuning in for a little while or for the first 2 seasons, the way it has worked to date is that I have had a guest and they have come on through a chosen topic and asked me fire 5 questions. They have fire 5 questions at me and I've not seen the questions beforehand. So for season 3, we're trying something a little bit different. So I am joined by my son, Nassim Ladjimi, who is going to join me for season 3. And we're changing things up a little bit in that this time, for this season, we are opening up the questions to you. So you can ask us 5 questions, and hopefully, as we answer them, you'll get a bit of a dynamic of my experience, my expertise, my thoughts and perspective, but also the thoughts and opinions of a younger person as well, because I recognize that my younger days are gone, but also I think younger people's opinions are really important and it helps to give that dynamic. So Nassim is in Bristol at the moment. The backdrop will change as the season goes on. For those of you who don't know, he is a professional athlete playing basketball out in Tunisia at the moment. So moving out to warmer climates out in the summer. But for this one, he is at home. And this is the pilot episode, so there's no topic for this one. I have opened it up over the last couple of weeks since announcing that Nassim's going to be joining me for the season. And I have opened it up for people to ask questions. I have a list of questions in front of me. Nassim has not seen these questions. Some of them specifically are for him, and others are for both of us. I think people want to know our different opinions and how they match up. So should we do this? Should we get into the question?
Let's get it.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get started.
I'm going to ask the one that is very specific to you first, because I think that also helps you to talk about you for a little bit, so people get a bit of a feel for who you are. So this question came in, which is definitely for you. And the question is, how did international professional basketball differ from where you have played previously?
That's a good question. So having played not just in England and in different countries before, I think this is the most different. I wouldn't, maybe not so much the basketball, but more the culture and the atmosphere of games is the most different I've experienced, where it's more of a football hooligan kind of crowd where there's flares, there's chants, and you really don't hear your teammates right next to you. Whereas in England, I'd say even though when it does get loud, it's more of a family friendly kind of vibe. And then, but I'd say the other than it being more physical and maybe a little bit quicker, there's not a huge difference. So the basketball side wasn't too hard to adjust to. It was more the culture and how practices are run and how they do things compared to how we in England do things.
Cool. So one of the things that I talk about with a lot is like transferable skills, like when people go to something that's different, of recognizing what they're taking into a new situation. So I'm going to throw in my own question and ask, like, what transferable skills do you think you took into this experience from your other experiences?
Another good question. Maybe I would say I'm a good people's person, so being able to kind of click with my teammates quite quickly helps with all these different situations I've been in. Once you're comfortable around your teammates, you kind of find yourself being more relaxed on the court and not as worried about messing up. Like when you're in a new place, you don't know how people are going to react or how they're going to feel if I've missed a couple threes when I know I can make my next one, they might not know that yet. So it's kind of, I think that's my biggest skill that I'm able to, bring to everywhere I go.
I always said that emotional intelligence of connecting with people is really important. The rest
Yeah.
of it, you kind of pick it up as you go. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to pick a number for the next question?
What are the numbers between is 1 to 5?
They are between 1 and 7. I'll just cross
7.
off the one you've done. So between 1 and 7.
I'm gonna go with number 6.
Number 6. Okay. So so I'll get you to answer it first, and then I'll add to it. So the question is, what was it like being a teen? Okay, talking about stuff that you had going on. Like, how did you manage that? So like talking to parents, talking to peers. And I think, just to give you some context to the question, I think obviously from my perspective, a lot of the people who I work with are parents, but obviously I work with young people as well. But being comfortable in talking about problems and talking about stuff that you've going on is like a real challenge for some people. So that's the question. Like, what was it like for you being a teen? How did you manage talking about stuff that was going on, or not talking about stuff that was going on, and like using parents or peers to give you that support?
So obviously with me and you, as you being one of my parents, I'd say we had a very good relationship during my teens. There wasn't very much that I didn't feel like I could come speak to you about, and that definitely helps for me personally. As any kind of situations that I wasn't sure with how to deal with, I would come to you and we talk it through, and you wouldn't necessarily give me the answer, but you'd kind of help me figure out how I feel to give myself the answer, which helped very much. But I've only just come out of my teens. I enjoyed majority of my teens. Even having like a lot of really good friends, kind of like from probably about 14 years old and up. Like that's where I've kind of made friends that I've still got to this day. And being around people that you trust, people that you enjoy being around, makes a difference. In terms of like how happy I was, and but yeah, like definitely with us it was definitely made help my I know a lot of parents and children don't have that relationship where they'll come home from school and that they won't talk about anything that they are thinking, feeling, or done, but we didn't have that relationship, which definitely helped my team.
It wasn't always like that. So what do you remember about like the first time where you would open up about something and come and talk to me? Because I think that's the challenge for a lot of young people, is like, how do you know that you can go and have that conversation? Like, how did you get to that point where you started to open up about stuff?
To be honest, I felt like we were always fairly close, even before teens. So even going into secondary school, and I kind of always didn't. I felt like I could always come to you about stuff. There was like anything that I really was struggling with. I did feel already comfortable. I didn't feel like there was a barrier to break. But I'm trying to think of like the first time I really came to you about anything. I don't know. It was probably a long time ago, so I'm not sure. But I just remember I didn't really feel that there was a barrier, like a wall to knock
Do you think
down.
it's easier to start with the smaller stuff to kind of
Definitely,
build
yeah,
that trust side of it?
definitely, definitely, I agree.
It's hard to remember that far back. Oh, and also I think
Yeah,
it's all hard to put your finger on how it happened. But I remember, there were some things that like you would come and talk to me about, and I would always say like, you can come and talk to me about anything, and then you would come and talk to me. And I think, and I think other parents will this will resonate with other parents of finding it really hard to kind of hold back like what my thoughts were or what my emotions were, and kind of, I guess, hold that space for you to work it through, because it's so, like you said, like not problem solve it, not give you the answers, because they're not my answers. It had to be what worked for you. And I know that that was a real challenge for some things, in like not jumping in with like getting in my emotions about your stuff and kind of holding that space for
yeah,
you. But I also know that like for you, you had other people that you could go and speak to as well. And I think that, like from my point of view, it was really important that if there were things that you couldn't speak to me about, that you had somebody else that you could go to.
Yeah.
I think that's the challenge. I think that's where the question comes from, is that, you know, for a lot of young people, like how do you build that with your parents, but also like how do parents build that with their children as well?
It's tough, yeah. I agree with how you approached it though, in the terms of not giving me the answer, because that's not how life works. I'm not always gonna have you to give me the answer. Got to figure it out for myself.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if I'd had this question, if I'd known what the question was, I could have maybe had a little think and been able to remember some more times. But yeah,
That's the thing with like making this podcast a little bit different, is not having those questions, so that you're answering very much from, I guess, from the heart, I suppose.
yeah,
I'm gonna ask the question that's underneath this, because it's on the same theme,
yeah,
and then we can move away onto a different one, which are a little
yeah.
bit more open. But I guess you've kind of touched on it a little bit. But how do you think parents can support young people without being overbearing? Like what's kind of your thoughts on it?
That's a good question. Without being overbearing, I think by just letting them know that you are there, and then when a time comes where they do need you, and kind of not necessarily giving them what they want to hear, but giving something that they're comfortable hearing, if that makes sense. And then yeah, like if if you say were, always asking me, what happened today in school, or what's going on, like kind of forcing an answer out of me, I'm going to be less likely to want to talk to you
Mm-hmm.
and to open up with you. But to kind of ensure that they know that the support is there whenever they'll need it, and then to kind of deliver. I think that's the kind of how I see that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what do you think? How do you see it?
Yeah, I kind of pick up on the same thing, actually. I think it's really difficult, because I think as a parent, you kind of know that something is going on. Like when something's not right, and probably in the same way that when something's not right with me. Like if I've got something on my mind, like you quite often pick up on that. But I
Yeah,
think it is that element of sort of saying like, look, I can see something's up, and so I'm here if you need to talk. And I think also, like, I learned with you that you're quite a reflective person. Like you quite often like to kind of take yourself off, you'll shut yourself in your room, and you'll kind of think things through, and then when you're ready, you'll come and talk about it either with me or with somebody else. And I think
yeah,
what you did that helped to make it easier for me was you would say, yeah, I've got stuff going on. So you confirmed that I'm not kind of going a little bit mad picking up on
yeah,
stuff that's not there. So you're like, yeah, I've got stuff going on, I'm okay. Like, so you would give me that reassurance that you were okay, but then you would tell me that you needed some space to work it through. And then you would tell me that you would come and speak to me. Like, so you made it easier to help you, because you told me what it was that you needed. And I know that like it took some time for us to kind of work that out, but I think that definitely made it easier. And it also meant then that, despite a lot of the time, like things would be like in my head, like just go and ask again, just go and check. And I know I still do that sometimes. I'm like, okay, like you'll say like, okay, I'm still okay, like that's the fourth time you've asked. So I think that kind of need to keep checking in is still there. But I think once when you would give me that reassurance, I would have to remind myself, like, he's told you he's okay, he's told you he needs some time to think about it, let him come to you when he's ready, and then kind of trust in you to know when that worked for you to step into that, and kind
yeah,
of, again, using the phrase holding that space for you to step into, rather than constantly like trying to step into it.
yeah. I think as teens, we know that our parents care about us, but it is the what we say, like like when parents are being annoying when they're nagging you if you're okay, even though their heart's in the right place. Like, I feel a lot of people do need that space just to reflect or think things over, whatever they to calm down, whatever they kind of need.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you think stops people, like apart from the relationship aside, like what do you think stops people from talking to their parents? That's not a question. I'm just going to be totally open. That's not a question. It's on the paper. I just
Yeah,
adding
no,
one
I
in.
kind of guessed that. I think whether it depends how like they look at their relationship with their parents. Like, is it like me and you, where I kind of see it more as a friendship, or is it a parent-child role, like where their job is to care for me, and that's that. I don't need to talk about my feelings with them because I have friends, or I just don't feel to talk about my feelings. I don't know. I think I just bridging the gap, like, and building a relationship of outside of just parent and child, and making it more of a friendship and more of like a bond. I think without that is what when you don't have that is when I feel like people don't open up as much.
Mm.
Or maybe on how parents react when you do open up. If I were to tell you something that you if I did something that you might not agree with or like, if you react in a way that makes me feel even worse about what I did, then I'm not. Why would I go and double down on how of guilt already? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so tough. And I think that's what we said at the beginning, isn't it? Of like holding how I feel about it when you kind of come to me with stuff, of like holding on to just kind of tucking away like what my thoughts and feelings are on it, and kind of making sure that I'm being there for you. But I think it's such a fine line between like building that really good relationship and still being a parent, because I mean it's different now because obviously you're, with you being 21, like the parenting role changes, but in your teens, like my role is to be a parent first, and the other bits are like a benefit, but you still kind of got to be, you've got responsibilities as a parent as well. And I think it's a really tough and an easy line to cross. But that's interesting dynamic. Okay,
Yeah.
do you want to change the subject a little bit?
We can do, yeah.
Okay, so you've got 1, 2, 3, and 5 to pick.
I will go with one.
1, okay. Short question. What motivates you?
In life or
That was the question. What motivates you? There was no context. There was nothing that came with it. So you can answer it however you want to answer it.
people around me, the people close to me, like you, dad, Amira, sisters, kind of like all the, people that make me want to be the best version of me. But then in my career wise, like in basketball wise, it's just to be complete. I just don't know. Like I love what I do. I love basketball, so it's not a chore for me to go and be. I don't need to be motivated to go and get better. But I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a tough question. Because I don't really know. Like, I'm not really sure. Like, I'm not really sure. I think I answered the question a little bit, but I think as best as I could. Like, just
It's a
kind of,
really open question,
yeah,
isn't it? It is a really, and I think I'm motivated in different ways by different things. So
yeah,
I guess motivations for work are very different to what motivates me and like outside of work. So
yeah.
um interesting. Okay. We'll probably squeeze in a few more than the 5 questions. So
No worries.
2, 3, or 5?
I'll go with three.
3. Okay. So this is a question for both of us, although it's going to
Mhm.
be we'll have different answers. But the question is, what do you think makes a good coach? So I'm guessing from your perspective, it's going to be a sports coach, and from my
Yeah.
perspective, it's going to be a more kind of holistic coach.
Do you want me to start off?
Yeah, why not? You're doing so well.
Um, what makes a good coach to me, and what I find good qualities in a coach is the biggest thing is the trust and the trust dynamic with the players.
Yeah.
So there's lines of being friends with your players and then having a good like relationship with your players. So I think you can have a somewhat friendship with players, but you can't be their friend because there's not going to be that same seriousness between you. Like if in training, if for example, if I see my coach as a friend and perhaps I'm not feeling up to practicing, I might take them, not me actually, but as an example, like they might take
Basically.
take the Mickey a little bit with the coach, and say either say he's injured, doesn't want to practice, or just have have try everything. And I think that's a bad dynamic. I think the coach needs to be respected and taken seriousness. And I don't know if fear is the right word, but like an element of that there is going to be consequences if you don't follow the coach's rules or systems and whatnot. And but yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Like the relationship with the players, I think make or breaks the team.
Which is interesting because our relationship and the trust is the same, I think, for coaching in my world as well. I think you need to build that rapport and build that trust for people to feel that it's a safe space for them to speak freely and be able to kind of really open up as to what's going on for them. So I think that's definitely the same. I think the only difference, not the only difference, but I think the key difference that comes to my mind in terms of the differences in coaching for both of us is that your coaches have a very defined idea of where they're trying to get you to. So it's more like, in that sense, it's more of a leader in like they've got a very clear goal and a very clearly defined way to get you to that goal. Whereas in my world, my role is to help the individual work out what that goal is and work out the best way for them to get there. So I think although it's still very goal focused and it's still very much about getting to that goal, I think that's probably one of the key differences. The trust, the rapport, the relationship is really important. Your coach is very much about getting you as a group to achieve that goal and they dictate how you get there. Whereas for me, it's almost taking that step back and making sure I'm not leading them, that they are finding their own way to get to their goals. So I think that's like, in terms of what you're saying, is probably one of the biggest differences. So it's almost like that then puts coaching in your world into more of a leadership role, which also explains why, like, picks up on what you were saying about you can't be that friendly, that you need to be friendly but not friends, because there's a clearly defined role, isn't there?
Yeah, it's the professional relationship in a way. Like you're not going to be friends with your bosses, your managers.
Yeah, and
because that can create the bad work dynamic, environment.
Yeah, and I think it's the same in my world as well. I think I would like to think that most people that I work with have said like friendly in approach, but there's also that line of like a boundary in terms of like the protecting the two, like the roles within that relationship. So interesting. Okay, doing well. Okay, number 2 or number 5? Number 5. What lessons, so this is going to be for both of us, what lessons have you learned from each other?
You can go first on this one.
So I think what I've learned from you is like you're just incredibly relaxed about stuff. And I know that sometimes that's probably one thing that I give you a bit of a hard time over, but I think it's a real strength of yours, is like you're really clear on what it is that you want, like you're really determined to make it happen, but your approach is also really relaxed about stuff. So I think when things are not in your control, you are really good at like letting that go and just kind of, you just got this kind of way of shrugging it off And I don't know whether that matches what's going on the inside, but definitely like that's what comes across. So I think that's what I've learned from you, is to just
Shrug
kind
off.
of let that go. When, like, I think one of my favorite things that you say, albeit sometimes you say it to me and it really annoys me because of the timing that you say it, but I think one of the things that you say a lot of is like, that's like not my problem, like that's a them problem, or that whole kind of not my circus, not my monkeys. I think you're really good at like not getting involved in other people's stuff and like letting go of the stuff that's not in your control. So I think
Yeah.
that's
Or why should it?
what I've
Why should
learned
I let
from.
it bother and concern me if it doesn't need to? If it's still going to be the same outcome otherwise?
Yeah, I think a lot of people find that really difficult. So I think that's like there's there's been occasions where you're dealing with stuff and I can feel myself getting dragged into it. And then I notice like, well, you're not even bothered about it. And it's your, like, it's your thing, it's your problem. So why am I worrying? And I think it is a parent thing to a point, but I'm like, why am I worrying about things that if you're not worried about it, why am I worrying about it? So yeah, I think that's what I've learned from you.
And then for me, I would say it's kind of the opposite, but kind of not. It's like when you have goals in mind, you put like all the hours you really need to in, as many as you can. Like every morning, I get up kind of late, and you've already had been working 4 hours, and yeah, that kind of makes me want to be like that, like, be up early, get a bunch of done, and then you've got more time in the day to do even more. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned from you. And I think I took that when I went into Met to
Mm.
going early, getting up crazy, stupid hours to go and shoot before school even started, and then that would just add on into how many sessions I was doing today. And I think it's what boosted my development the way it did. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know
Mm.
what you were going to say to that. I didn't know what your answer was going to
But I didn't
be.
know what you were going to say about me, so
You were waiting, waiting to see
that's
what I
why
said
I
first.
asked you go first.
That sounds fair. Okay, I have one more question on my list, but the community have been firing questions into the chat, so we'll see how we're doing for time. So the
Yeah.
last question on the list on here: how do you keep your mental well-being in a good place?
Shrug everything else off. No, it is kind of like that. It is what can I control and what can't I control. So if I can control it, I'm gonna go do something about it. And if I can't, then as much as it may bother me at the start, it eventually will just kind of roll off my shoulders and kind of keep me at peace, keep me into well balanced. And plus, in my career, when I'm playing basketball, everything else kind of doesn't exist, which helps.
Yeah, you do have an insane tunnel vision when you've got your eye on something.
Yeah. And yeah, it's always been like that in basketball. It could be anything could be happening off the court, but it will never affect my basketball side. It just all just gets straight put in the back of my head. And then when my basketball stuff is bothering me, then I'll find other stuff to push the basketball stuff into the back of my head.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I manage and juggle things.
So what, like switching focus?
Yeah, it's kind of like two different modes. It's like basketball mode and life mode. When life's bothering, basketball goes in front and the way around and so on.
So basketball's your way of coping. It's kind of, I guess it's really about being present as well, isn't it? When you're on the basketball court, you're just there and
Yeah.
that's where you are. I think it's a great expression of being where your feet are at.
Yeah,
I think
that
that's
makes
definitely
sense.
the
Yeah.
case for basketball, isn't it? When you're on that court, zoned out.
Exactly.
Nothing
Exactly.
and nobody
Even
exists.
in years that I've had very tough years, it's never affected. Like some of my best seasons have been in my tough mental years. So they don't. they don't correlate with each other. They don't ever. They're like parallels. They
Yeah,
never conflict.
it's true. I think mine are that dissimilar from yours, actually. I'm obviously not
Yeah.
basketball, but I think like gym and going and switching off. I think being able to go and do something that completely takes my mind off of everything else, completely switches my focus, and being active with it is really good for me. Music, and I know that is for you too as well. Just
Mm,
kind of earphones in, headphones in, and just kind of zoning out. I think it's really important to take a break from the hard stuff and kind of switch into something else for a bit.
definitely.
Yeah, that might actually be the one question where we both had a similar answer. Right, so I'm just scrolling through and looking what the so there's a question about motivation which we've answered. Oh, this is an
Yeah.
interesting one. If you go back to your 14-year-old self, I'll have to think a little bit further back than you, but if you go back to your 14-year-old self, do you think you'd be doing now what you thought you would then?
14. To be honest,
Mm.
maybe not exactly the way I got here, but
Yeah.
yeah, like I think once I fell in love with basketball, I all I want to do is be a professional player. So that is what I am now. But it's definitely not the path I thought I would have taken. And I don't think I would have been professional as early as like as young as I was when when I signed signed to be. But I think with my confidence and I think I would have yeah.
Did you know that that was going to happen, or did, because I know you always, it was always the dream, you always hoped it was going to happen, but at what point did you start to really believe that it was possible?
It fluctuated. There would be times where I was like, oh, like I could actually really go far with this, and then there would be periods like or seasons where I didn't have a good season, and I would kind of be like, oh, like have I been wasting all this time, like all this training, all these hours I was getting up early to go and train, like was it just a waste? And I was like, just keep going, and it's gonna take me somewhere. It's either gonna take me it's gonna take me somewhere, like whether it's a professional or whether it's at university or whatever the case might have been. But I wasn't for sure always, but there was times where I was and there's times where I wasn't.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Mhm. See, at 14 I wanted to be a police officer, which is
You
clearly
were
what
it's
I'm doing
for a
now.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, I think when I look at it's an interesting question, because when I look at why I wanted to be a police officer, a lot of that is what I'm doing now. So like the help, the
Help people.
support, like not having a 9 to 5, not having something that's the same day in and day out. And I think one of the things that like for me about being in the police was, about helping, I think specifically helping people that didn't have that voice and helping them to find that voice and giving them that support. So definitely what I'm doing now. Yeah, not the blue lights and the fast cars, never got to do that bit, but yeah, you're right, the other bit was yeah, I did kind of pick it up in a different way. Okay, right, I'm just looking through these other questions that have come in, and I think we can feed some of these into other topics. So the episodes that follow from this will all be topic based, and we'll publish what the topic is before it goes out. What's your biggest achievement to date?
Hmm. Um, it's maybe a few things. I don't think I have a quite certain defined biggest achievement. Like signing my first professional contract was big and big to me. Um, going to America, something that for a long time I really wanted to do. I think going to America and playing the way I did, like having probably my best like statistical season, that was that kind of spoke to me in the like I've come to where I've always wanted to come and I've killed it here, which kind of really gave me a really big confidence boost. Um, sure. I think I would go with either those two. I think But like for a single achievement, I probably have to go with a pro contract or being invited to the national team, which will hopefully happen again soon.
Yes.
Yeah. What
Yeah,
would you say yours is,
it will.
other than me?
I think in like looking at, it's hard, isn't it? Because I think like you, that there's individual achievements. I think looking at the big picture now, like I mean, obviously there's you, obviously. So I think from like a personal perspective, I think raising you and you being a pretty good, well-rounded individual is probably the biggest one. I think from a professional point of view, and there were lots of achievements in my time with the police, but I think, doing what I do now, building up the business, keeping a business that is kind of survived the pandemic and all of those things, I think is there. But I think overall, which it's kind of hard to sum up in words, but I think it's something that a lot of people strive to have and find it really difficult to achieve. But I think my achievement, if you like, is like I wake up in the morning and I'm good with where life is at. I love what I do for work. I love that, I get time with you and that we get on really well and that you're doing really well, like family are all doing really well. And I think it's probably, I don't know if that is an achievement in itself, but I think being able to live a life that you love feels like in this day and age is a bit of an achievement, quite a big achievement. But yeah, loads of achievements along the way. But yeah, doing this is definitely up there and being able to do it. So yeah, interesting. But like, I know I'm not done yet, and I know you're not done yet either. So
Got more to do for sure.
Watch this space.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, that was definitely more than 5 questions, but a good mix in there. And there's loads that I can see in there that we haven't answered, but hopefully we can kind of shoehorn those into the next topics. So the next episode, the topic will be in line with the topic for August, and that's going to be relationship with yourself and other people. So that'd be interesting because there could be some questions come through about teammates, relationships with coaches. We will see because the questions are over to you guys that watch and listen. So
we need some more good ones in.
Yeah, they were good questions today too. And hopefully they've given people a bit of a flavour about you and what you're about. And if they've come to watch this because of you, then a bit of a flavour of me and what I'm about. So interesting. Right. So questions on relationship with yourselves and others, get those firing in ready for the next episode, and we will catch you there. You might still be here in Bristol. You might have gone and be in warmer climates.
We'll have to see. We will have to see.
We will see.
Either way, look forward to doing the next one.
See you on the next episode and catch you there.